Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Candidate Forum hosted by Finn Hill Neighborhood Alliance for the Kirkland City Council folks who are running for office this go-round. We, Finn Hill Neighborhood Alliance, are one of the 13 neighborhood associations in the city of Kirkland, and as our mission is simply connecting neighbors with nature, this is part of our mission. And a huge thanks to Holy Spirit Lutheran Church for hosting this, for setting this up, for running the video, which means that I'm not double dipping as moderator, having to do the video and this, which is awesome. So thank you so much for taking care of that. Yes. And honestly, all the other community service that you do. Scouts here tonight, all kinds of other things. And thank you for you all for coming. This is what makes democracy work, among other things, of course, to engage in conversation. So that's our hope tonight, is that this becomes, in a somewhat formal and stilted way, because it's formal, but a conversation where each of the candidates will be asked questions. They will have a time period, generally speaking, 60, 90, or 120 seconds to answer. And we'll have opening statements that'll be a couple minutes. We'll run through some questions that came from the community, and then on FHNA we kind of collated, and obviously there's multiple people asking more or less the same thing, so we wordsmithed a bit and came up with questions that we think will take about 45 minutes-ish. And then followed by, depending on how everything goes, 20 to 30 minutes of time for all y'all to ask questions as well directly. That said, the way we're going to do the questions from you all is if at any point during this meeting you raise your hand, someone will come, if you don't have one already, and give you a piece of paper that looks like, a lot of you have it probably already in your hand. Very good. Yes, one of those, or more than one of those if you want them. Those will be collected, kind of gone through. Again, I'm guessing a lot of us have some of the same kinds of questions. So if yours isn't read, it doesn't mean we're ignoring you, I promise. But it does mean that somebody else has asked a question that's very similar. We will get through as many questions from you as we can. So, without further ado, we would like to begin with candidate statements. You will have 2 minutes to just introduce yourself and why you're running, and let us know.
Number one, start with number one. I am number one. All right.
Go for it.
Well, I'll just stand up for this. First of all, thank you so much, Finn Hill Association, for actually having this event, hosting this event. I think these events are super important for people to get to know the candidate, so thank you. You may be wondering why at this stage I am running for Kirkland City Council when I'm raising 2 elementary school children and working full-time as a lawyer. The quick answer is I care very deeply about the kind of community we're building. I love this city and want to ensure Kirkland remains a vibrant, welcoming place for my kiddos, seniors, families, and everyone in between. One thing I have realized is that in order to make that happen, good, thoughtful, common sense decisions need to be made at the council level. And I, coming from a fresh perspective, believe I can bring that skill set to the table. A lot of what is required to serve effectively on city council requires navigating complex laws, zoning codes, policy frameworks. And this is precisely where my legal expertise will come into good use on council. As a lawyer, I don't just understand the rules. I know how to carefully interpret them and change them, understand that each and every word that we use in an ordinance or a policy has significant impacts on our communities. Throughout my career, I have successfully advocated for regulatory changes through common sense, data-driven approaches, and I'm going to bring that same determination to City Council. My values are summarized in 4 categories. Number 1, ensuring we have open green spaces throughout Kirkland, because, come on, that's why we love Kirkland, right? Number 2, create an adequate infrastructure so that you all can get from point A to point B without a headache. Number 3, creating more housing options so that it's more affordable. And number 4, keeping Kirkland safe and beautiful so that we can all continue to enjoy Kirkland the way that it is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, Catie?
Hi, good evening, Pitt Hill, and thanks for having me here. My name is Catie Malik, and I'm running for City Council. I've had the privilege of calling Kirkland home for the past 21 years. Before that, I grew up a short distance away in Bothell, and I've witnessed firsthand how our community has evolved, and I truly appreciate the challenges and the changes that growth is placing on our neighborhoods and infrastructure. I'm running for City Council because I believe Kirkland deserves a leader who will be a voice for all of its residents. Unlike the current council, which too often seems beholden to a particular political ideology, I'm loyal to the people of Kirkland. I'm not here to represent a party. I'm here to represent you. I believe in practical common sense solutions that reflect the values and needs of our diverse community. Transparency is at the core of my approach to leadership. Every decision we make as a city should be open, honest, and rooted in what's best for Kirkland. As your representative, I will always prioritize clear communication and work to ensure your voice is heard in every discussion. Kirkland is growing, and while that brings opportunities, it also presents challenges. Ensuring we have the right infrastructure, whether it's roads, transportation, utilities, or public spaces, is crucial to making sure our growth is both sustainable and positive. We need to plan for the future, making sure we have the resources in place to meet the needs of our growing population, while also maintaining the quality of life that makes Kirkland such a wonderful place to live, work, and visit. Beyond infrastructure related to growth, another key value that guides my approach is fiscal accountability. We are stewards of the taxpayer dollars, and we must make every dollar count. I'm committed to smart, responsible budgeting that ensures we're funding the services that matter most to you. While also maintaining a sustainable, balanced budget, this includes making sure the programs we invest in are delivering measurable, meaningful results.
Thanks so much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jon Pascal. Thank you, Finhill Neighborhood Alliance, for organizing this. I'm honored to be running for re-election to the council. I've lived here with my family since 2001. I run a small business in Kirkland, and I've built my career as a state-licensed civil engineer and transportation planner. For over 2 decades, I've helped communities across Washington state tackle complex land use and transportation challenges. And I've brought that practical, data-driven, community-focused mindset to my work on council and earlier on the Planning and Transportation Commissions. I'm running again because Kirkland needs that perspective more than ever on the council. With increasing state control over local land use, we need thoughtful decisions grounded in data and community voices. I'll continue to be a voice of reason, pushing for outcomes that make sense, that are accountable, and that truly serve our residents. I'm proud of what we've accomplished together over the years, investing in our public safety, hiring more firefighters, modernizing our fire stations, standing up the regional crisis response agency, supporting survivors through a new sexual assault advocate program, and helping our neighbors in need through a homelessness action team. I've also strengthened neighborhoods by investing in sidewalks and crosswalks around schools, delivering investments to the Cross-Kirkland corridor, improving key corridors across the city with multimodal infrastructure, and expanding parks and open spaces, such as the Green Loop, Juanita Heights Park, and Big Fin Hill Park. But we know there's always more to do in the city. So I'll keep working for safer streets, sustainable growth, housing that keeps pace with infrastructure, and investments in our parks and open spaces. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'm Kurt. We got something pretty special here. It's rare that a day goes by that I don't feel so lucky to live here in Kirkland. When I first came to Kirkland, like most folks, I actually didn't know very much about it, but it didn't take me very long to fall in love. Kirkland is safe and welcoming. Our low crime rate and great schools make it a fantastic place to raise a family. And on top of all of that, Kirkland is stunningly beautiful, from our amazing public waterfront to our extensive system of parks. The Kirkland my daughter came home to from the hospital 16 years ago looked a bit different than the one we live in now. And when my children decide to start families of their own, I'm sure it will look a little bit more different. The question isn't whether change is going to happen. It's whether and how that change is going to alter the things that truly make Kirkland special. We can have a city that's safe, where our children also can have access to the opportunities that we were fortunate enough to enjoy. We can have a city where every neighborhood has its quirks and character, and where our older adults who built that character can age in place with dignity. We can have a city where it's safe and comfortable to walk, bike, or take transit, and where we celebrate and protect our natural beauty. But we won't get those things without leadership. And that leadership requires three things. First, you need your colleagues to trust your commitment to put problem solving and long-term thinking above political expediency. I have support from current members of council, not because we always agree, but because they know that we'll be able to work together when we disagree. Second, you need strong regional relationships. Kirkland does not exist in a vacuum, and our most difficult challenges don't stop at our borders. That's why I have the support of over 90% of endorsing council members from cities that border Kirkland. Most importantly, you need a positive and coherent vision for the future, one rooted in our city's values, and that can sustain and enhance the things that make us love Kirkland. I'm running to bring all these things to Kirkland City Council, and I'd be delighted for you to be a part of that with me. Thank you.
All right, we'll now move to the section where we'll be offering candidates questions that came from community input. During this section, as everyone is doing appropriately right now, we'd ask the audience to feel free to applaud as you have done, but again, specific comments we'll leave for the after conversations. We will rotate in terms of who goes first, so Catie will be up first, but you'll each have a chance to answer this one, and it'll be pretty quick.
How much time do you have on this?
This one I'm expecting you're going to answer in a couple of words, maybe only one word.
Okay.
So presumably not very long.
Okay.
But as you think about where Kirkland is now and where Kirkland is going in these next, say, 3 to 5 years, given everything that is going on, good, bad, and otherwise, but particularly in Kirkland, as you look out the next 3 to 5 years, you're going to rank 1 to 10. 10 is the best possible future. 1 is really bad. Where do you think Kirkland's status quo, where do you think Kirkland's next 3 to 5 years is headed? And just give that a number. And you'll have there'll be a couple follow-ups, so you have a chance to do things other than a number. But if you're going to give that a number from 1 to 10, status quo, where are we headed right now, in your opinion? Just really quickly, just down the row, each take a turn, 1 to 10.
I think it really depends. I think it really depends on who gets elected. I think it could go,
Well, status quo.
Status quo, like if everything stayed stagnant,
We continued on the same trajectory.
we'd probably be at like a 7.
Okay. John?
Yeah, that's a difficult question.
You'll have a chance for follow-ups.
Okay, well, what came to my mind was that we can get to a 10, but we're 6 right now.
Okay. Kurt?
I actually don't disagree that much. I think if things continue on I can think of several things that if they continue on their current trajectory are going to be a real problem. So I'd love to be as optimistic to say that we can just close our eyes and get to 10, but it's going to take more than that.
So where are you at?
Oh, I'm around where John is, around 6.
Okay.
Same.
Shilpa? Okay. So first follow-up, and we'll start with John. Why that number and not something a bit lower? Like what's going well, what's already going really well that you give it a 6 or a 7, that we would want to see those things continue, that this is great? Like basically what kept you from giving a 3, 4, or 5, right? What gave you at a 6 or 7? So 60 seconds for these are brief.
Sure. So the reason I gave it a 6, is because we routinely hear from residents across the city. We do a community survey every 2 years, and we get pretty high marks on things that we're doing as a city. But like I said in my opening statement, there's always things to improve, and I think there's some uncertainty in the future right now in government, in the economy, and then we have some real disagreements around where we're heading from a land use and development perspective. So that's what puts me at a 6. But like I said, I think there's opportunities to improve that if we make the right choices and elect the right leaders going forward.
Okay, Kurt, what's going well?
Just to clarify the question, are we only supposed to talk about why it's not lower?
Yeah, why it's not lower. What's going well that keeps it up at your level? The next question will have it the other side of this.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, of the thousands of people that I've talked to, it's, I ask them questions like, what are the main issues that you're facing here in Kirkland? And honestly, there are a very large number of them who say, I just love living in Kirkland. And that's the end of the conversation. And so it's hard for me to think of a particularly lower number because we are serving a lot of our residents very well. And we are so, like I said before, we are so fortunate to live here. We are one of the areas that's going to be less affected directly by worsening climate change, and in that sense, we're also very fortunate. And so, as homes in Florida become uninsurable over the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to be doing a lot better up here, and so that's why I didn't go much lower.
All right, Shilpa?
Yeah, I think in my experience, also speaking to a lot of voters, I have a large portion have indicated to me also that they are happy. And I also look at my own family life. We live near our school. I have 2 kids. They're growing up very happily. We have a large community that lives around us that help each other. And so we see positivity every day, just walking down the street around where we live. And there are also a lot of different opportunities for children, for adults to socialize, to communicate, to get employed. So the economy is also doing pretty well. And so that's the reason why I decided to pick 6.
All right, Catie?
So just having lived here and the reason why we moved here, and in addition to that, everyone, many of the folks I've spoken with as well, a lot of why I would give Kirkland a 7 is safety, the schools, the neighborhoods, the parks, really the ability to raise a family in Kirkland and feel safe while you're doing that. That's probably, and the environment that we live in, but that's why I would give it a 7.
Very good. And you can probably see where this is going next. So thinking about the number that you gave initially, what would it take to move that number up 1 or 2 spots, right? Like what would be the next practical things that would really move the needle in this answer that you gave, that go from from 7 to an 8, from a 6 to a 7, or, from a 6 to an 8, but that next increment, like what are some of the things that are going to really move the needle going forward? And so, Kurt?
Yeah, so for every, handful of folks that I talk to that are perfectly happy here in Kirkland, there are a number of folks who opened the door, and I looked in and I saw a bunch of cardboard boxes because they are moving to Monroe because they can't afford to live in Kirkland anymore. And so I look at the pattern that I'm seeing there of more and more people being forced out, and I think that what would make me raise the number is knowing that we're doing something serious to try to take care of those folks and make sure they can stay in our community. These are our nurses, these are our teachers, these are our baristas, these are the people that cut not my hair but other people's hair. And if we can help keep some of those folks in our community, these are the folks that keep our economy running, they keep our community running. That would help me. That would help me raise that number a little bit.
All right, Shilpa.
Yeah, I think one area that I think we could greatly improve is really transportation and being able to get from point A to point B. I know there are a lot of families that are suffering from having to pick up their children, go from soccer practice to some other practice, and to school, and then even work. I I think there's a lot of infrastructural needs that I think can be improved. And that is something that, I personally want to dig deep into how we make determinations around whether some infrastructure is adequate when something is being built. If there is new development coming into play, how are we making that determination that a certain infrastructure is the right amount of infrastructure to be set? So these are things that I do want to dig deep into if I were to become a council member.
All right, Catie.
So some common themes I've heard while out talking to residents and doorbelling has been traffic. Issues of traffic, a lack of buses, just comprehensive bus routes, not just one big fancy bus route, but comprehensive bus routes that come into the different neighborhoods. I've heard of it on Finn Hill and in Juanita that it's pretty much a transportation desert, and that's a challenge for folks. And another common theme I hear is property taxes. Folks are getting taxed out of their home. I've heard it many times that folks are on fixed income and their property taxes are more than their mortgage has ever been. So I think we really need to think long and hard about our approach and make sure that while we're trying to make it affordable for others, that we're not making it unaffordable for those who live here.
All right, thanks. All right, Jon,
All right.
60 seconds.
Well, there's not just one thing. There's many things, and that's why if it was easy, we'd fix it by now. It's around cost of living, I think, is the biggest thing. The continual increase in costs for people, pricing people out. That relates to housing, more housing options for those that want to live here, for those that are just starting out, for those seniors that are trying to downsize. And the other thing that I hear when I'm knocking on the doors is just feeling like people are not being heard or listened to in the community. And that's something that I think that we can change as a city, and really making sure that we're hearing from all voices, listening, and not dismissing. And that's something that I hear quite often.
Very good. Now moving to a question that each of you got ahead of time. We asked the candidates this question. If you could complete only 3 projects or initiatives during your term as city council member, which would they be? Please be specific, briefly tell why those 3 and how you'd get them accomplished. So Shilpa, you're up first. 2 minutes.
So number 1, I would reduce traffic congestion by 50% in all areas of Kirkland. That would be my goal. And the way I would do that is I would do a transportation study to evaluate these arteries and what is causing that congestion. And I would come up with strategies, solutions, multiple modes of transportation. Car, if you want to drive a car, drive a car. If you want to bike, bike. If you want to ride a bus, ride a bus. But provide multiple transportation options so that people can decide what transportation option they want to use. I also want to look into implementing AI tools. There are other cities across the U.S. that have actually implemented AI tools, such as SureTrack in Pittsburgh, that have reduced traffic congestion by 47%. These are easy tools that I think we should at least think about piloting in Kirkland. Number 2, I want to minimize increases in our property taxes so that people are not pushed out of Kirkland. And the way I'm going to do that is first look at our massive pot of money and see where is that money being spent currently. Are we spending it in the right places or not? And really do a deep dive and detailed assessment of that. And then I would also plan for growth so that tax burden is distributed more widely. The reality is the more homes there are, the more that tax burden gets distributed across more people. And ultimately, each individual person pays less tax. So that should be part of our growth mindset. And number 3, I want Kirkland to be even more beautiful than it currently is by the time I'm on council. And the way I'm going to do that is make sure that Kirkland continues to be green and beautiful, that we prioritize making sure that we keep our trees. I know that there's a lot of concern with developers coming in and maybe coming in and wiping out our trees, I do think we need to make sure that we're looking at those things very carefully.
All right, Catie.
So I think a common theme is financial and as well as affordability and traffic. And I think one of the fundamental things we can do to improve affordability and address tax issues is to look at our MFTs and how we're structuring those to incentivize big corporations versus the small homeowners. And in addition to that, I would look at our big bucket of money and create outcomes-based programs. I think that's one of the things we're missing in government is really identifying metrics that we're trying to achieve as we're spending money. I think that King County would have avoided the $1.8 billion debacle that they just encountered if they had outcomes-based programs. I would also really focus on spending money on who that would benefit the 80% versus special interests. And another thing that would help affordability and also really help our businesses in Kirkland is if we streamline our permitting process. Kirkland is notorious for having really difficult, expensive permitting processes that don't seem to have an advantage over other cities. And I see a lot of businesses in downtown Kirkland that are struggling to keep their doors open because of our permitting process and really puts barriers in the way for them to do commerce and business.
Thank you. Jon?
All right, well, I'd tell you first that I wouldn't be satisfied if I only did 3 things in 4 years. But if I had to choose, parks, transportation, and communication are kind of key things. And that's because I've heard that from the community. For parks, it's really about expanding year-round amenities that are serving our growing population. So that does mean an indoor aquatics facility without new taxes, more all-season fields so teams can practice year-round, and additional indoor community spaces so families don't have to wait on the long wait lists we have for recreation programs. For transportation, I'm going to talk about Finn Hill. We've made progress on Finn Hill, but residents still face very poor transit options, limited safe walking and biking routes off the hill. And so my priority is really completing that multimodal transportation system with completing Juanita Drive, Simons Road, 132nd Street. These are projects that will make it safer and easier for people to get around by all modes. And then when it comes to communication, I really want every resident to clearly see and understand how their input shapes policy. This means having two-way dialogue on issues, having strong feedback loops, and really understanding how that information is used in our decision-making process. We also need to be summarizing things in plain English. What does this land use decision mean? What will that result in? So those are things that I'd like to see, and I think me taking kind of a practical approach, I think those are things that we can actually accomplish.
Thanks. All right, Kurt.
All right, well, I'm going to wish for 3 more wishes. Number 1 is going to be build more affordable housing. We are facing a crushing affordability crisis here in Kirkland. I've talked to you already about all the people that I talk to on a daily basis who are worried whether they or their kids will be able to continue to live here in Kirkland. Since 2019, we not only have not caught up to our affordable housing targets, we have fallen further and further behind. We were supposed to be building something like 500 units per year, and we've barely built that in the last 8 years. One way to get more affordable housing is by protecting the new McMansion fee that disincentivizes tearing down old homes only to replace them with a single 5,000 square foot house that takes up the whole lot, costs 3 or 4 times as much, and doesn't house any more people. And this fee is actually set to generate more funding for affordable housing here in Kirkland than any other city program. So that would be one of the ways I would accomplish that. The second one is going to be a personal bee in my bonnet, which is I want to get us a tool library here on the east side. And the reason why I want to do that is because I like to finish what I've started. I've been working on that project for a while now. Very excited about the future of it. I think it's going to be the envy of the east side. And it ticks a lot of boxes for me. It reduces waste, saves our community members money, and it creates a community hub all at the same time. And then third, to echo a little bit what Jon said, I really want to reform our public engagement process. Too often our public engagement happens at the very end of a process. It's too late to take that feedback and do anything with it. People do wind up feeling frustrated and unheard. I think we should have public engagement that starts early, is ongoing, and hears from everybody in our community. Getting these things done is, you're going to do it the same way you get anything done in government, which is you actively connect with your stakeholders, you make the case, you build support, and then ultimately you get the votes. Thanks.
That's fine. You can clap. It's all good. Moving on to the next question. To address a specific concern that a lot of people on Finn Hill share, although certainly others in the city do as well, and that is tree canopy. We did actually send the candidates the 2021 tree canopy survey just so that they have some data to look at. But the question we wanted to ask specifically is, when Finn Hill was part of the annexation, became part of Kirkland, the goal was 40% tree canopy, and that's basically what we had. But we have slipped since then. And you'll see even on this, in that 3-year period, 0.8% less, especially on Finn Hill. And so specifically for raising tree canopy numbers on land managed by the city, first part of the question, where's the disconnect with the city saying we would plant more trees on city land, but that number not going up by a whole lot? And how might you address this? And there'll be a part 2 as well. So Catie, you're up first. Sorry, 90 seconds.
Okay, I feel like it's fairly simple. You plant more trees. You identify areas where there's city-owned land and property, and you plant more trees. But I think the bigger issue is not going to be city-owned land. That bigger issue is private land and how we're allowing it to be developed. And if we are not focused on creating density in urban centers, then we're just going to continue to slip further and further behind on that metric of 40% tree canopies. So that would be my number one focus, would be to identify areas of density and then leave more open space in the neighborhoods, in the single-family neighborhoods.
All right, Jon.
All right, well, trees, it's quite the divisive issue in this community, to be honest. And what I hear from residents, and I think many of you feel this, is that you see trees cut down with new development, but then it's almost impossible to cut down that one tree that's causing a problem for you on your property. And why is that? And that's extremely frustrating. And that's something that frustrates me too. So I think we need to kind of create that balance and that flexibility for private property owners to take down a tree where they need. And then we have goals and we have policies around replanting trees, the right tree in the right spot. For me, it's about, and what we've seen is you've seen parks plant a lot of trees in parks. If you go down to Juanita Beach Park, if you go to O.Denny, you see more trees planted in the parks, and that's intentional because we're trying to increase tree canopy across the city and then on roadway right-of-ways. What we need to do is continue to maintain those trees. We see a lot of trees with ivy grown on them that are dying, that are falling along our public right-of-ways, and that's an opportunity to increase tree canopy so that we don't keep falling behind our goal of 40%. And Finn Hill's a big contributor to that today. And that, if you've ever read that piece that the Finn Hill Neighborhood Alliance shared, is you see the most tree canopy degradation is on Finn Hill because of the amount of development that's occurring.
Kurt?
Yes, I actually want to echo something that Jon just said. I hear a lot of that same frustration from folks. You talk to some people and they're angry about anyone taking down a tree, and you talk to someone else and they're angry about the giant fees in lieu that they had to pay for taking down trees on their property. So it's clear that the tree code is not working for everyone, and we probably need to revisit that. But I think there's a lot of opportunity to plant more trees that comes with other policies. For instance, I think if we reform our parking laws, we could actually create a lot less asphalt and a lot more space for trees. I think I'm a big fan of street trees. We have street trees in a lot of the streets in my neighborhood, and they really add to the feel of the neighborhood. And I think more people deserve access to that. And that brings me to my final point, which is about access and equity and who gets to enjoy the tree canopy. And I think everyone in Kirkland deserves to enjoy the tree canopy, and we should be working toward providing that for everyone in the city. So there are a lot of different policies that we could talk about that would help us add more trees, but it's clearly a priority, and I don't think there's a shortage of options. So.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. When I've done door knocking, I've heard multiple times from individuals that have said very much similar to what Jon and Kurt have said. Is, some people they'll have like a dead tree that is about to fall on their house, and they are not able to remove that tree. But then there's a lot, 4 lots over, where they have removed 15 trees. And so there has to be an equity in terms of how trees are treated across the board. But my overarching policy would be we want to keep the canopy, right? We want to keep it healthy. We want more trees, especially with climate change coming around the corner. This area is going to be a safe haven. And so we want to make sure that we continue to have initiatives and policies that promote the growth of trees, the planting of trees. And I know that, right now, some of the policies, like the landmark trees, for an example, and the crowded trees, those are protected. And if a builder wants to do anything with those, they have to jump through multiple hoops. And I think those are good things. But I also think that we really do need to analyze our tree code and just make sure, kind of almost do another deep dive into these things. Many of these things haven't been looked at for years. And so really making sure that we're kind of reviewing these provisions that we have, making sure that it is making sense and equitable across the entire population. But I also do definitely think, there are some initiatives like the Plant 10,000 Trees initiative that we can implement as well. Thank you.
So to follow up on that, there are obvious trade-offs, as each of you have already mentioned, obvious trade-offs between development and trees. Like we all see that. But the question is for you, like where in your mind do those trade-offs, like where's that fulcrum? Where's that point where the decision has to be made? Like where does that line fall for you in that relative weighting of tree canopy and new development? So I think we're on to Jon as the first.
Same time.
Yes, 60 seconds. Or sorry, 90, yes, 90, sorry.
Well, I think this is a function of that, we have competing goals. We want increased tree canopy, and we want more housing. And I think in Finn Hill, for example, you kind of see that becoming more and more an issue because the remaining areas that are being developed are those that are really difficult to develop in. They're the ones with steep slopes, oddly shaped properties, usually heavily forested. And so you're seeing that degradation. And I think part of this is, and this is something that I want to talk about more, is that we take a one-size-fits-all approach to how we go about land use planning and land use regulations in the city. And my argument would be that that's not always the case. Especially in topographically challenged areas like Finn Hill, that we need to be a little bit more thoughtful, especially because we've increased density in our neighborhoods with middle housing. So you're going to start to see much more dense housing in the neighborhoods, and that's going to take place in areas that are really difficult and expensive to develop because those are the remaining areas with trees. But we can plant trees, and we can, as we develop, we can plant more trees, and those trees can be in the right spots, and hopefully they can survive and grow for a very long time, and we'll get back that canopy as long as we plan and do this in a thoughtful manner.
All right, Kurt.
All right, well, I mean, the first question that I would ask is which trees? Because trees are all over the place. And when I see an aerial photo of a new development in Lake Stevens where they have clear-cut, 800 acres to plot out a whole bunch of new single-family homes, I start to wonder, like, is one tree in Finn Hill worth, like, how many trees in Lake Stevens is worth one tree in Finn Hill? And I'm not saying that it's not one-to-one. It's clearly not one-to-one. Like, I value a tree in Finn Hill, one tree in Finn Hill, more than one tree out in the middle of nowhere. But as far as climate change is concerned, it doesn't really care. And we need to be thinking about that. So that said, I actually am going to push back on the idea that compact development or that densification, to use a dirty word, is actually the enemy of trees. It's actually the friend of trees. And there are a lot of ways that we can build more compactly and that we can fit more people in a smaller amount of space that leaves more room for those trees. Everything from single stair reform to the missing middle policies that we talked about. There are lots of ways that we can build, and there are lots of examples of this all over the world. It's not hypothetical. We can live in lush, verdant neighborhoods and house our neighbors. Thanks.
All right, Shilpa.
Yeah, I think we need to also look at just a broader perspective on how the canopy, like what percentage of the canopy is 40%, 50%, 60%. How does that impact air quality, the overall environment of the area, and really make a calculated decision based off of that on a full-fledged analysis. I also think the age of trees also matter, kind of piggybacking on what Kurt was saying. If there's a tree that is 5 years old versus 20 years old, right, there is a different level of oxygen that's coming out of those trees. And so I think we need to have kind of a more of an overarching analysis of at what point do we continue to get the benefits of having a healthy, wonderful environment that we live in, and then based on that, depending, and it really does also have to be a parcel by parcel analysis. There are certain areas that are harder to build in versus others are not. And so I don't think it's going to be a one-size-fits-all, like a blanket peanut butter policy that will apply to all parcels across the land, but really will be a parcel by parcel, area by area analysis.
All right, Catie.
Well, first, I think we should congratulate Finn Hill for all the work they've already done previously for preserving their tree canopy, especially with the grade loop that they've that has really begun within this neighborhood. And I think that the tree canopy is such an important issue, and especially as we talk about climate change and also about livability and health outcomes. The city of Kirkland is already a moderate heat island, and when you have a heat island, it impacts health outcomes for folks of all ages. And if we continue to degrade our tree canopy and cut down trees and add density throughout Kirkland, it's only going to magnify that. That's why I really believe in order to spare the tree canopy that we currently have, we really need to work on pinpointing areas for density and growth so that we can preserve the tree canopy that we have. And especially in areas like Finn Hill, and where the geology of Finn Hill makes it particularly difficult when you're developing, as John had pointed out, there's landslide issues and steep slopes. So we really need to be thoughtful about maintaining our tree canopy there just to preserve the properties.
All right. Speaking of new buildings and development, state law has this came into effect this summer, and I work as a city planner, so I'm very aware of this. State law has mandated fourplexes and in some cases sixplexes in cities of Kirkland size and above. And so that came into effect this year. The city implemented that in its zoning code this year, as did Everett and a bunch of other cities. We understand that city staff will propose further implementation, further amendments to this next year. Do you think Kirkland should go beyond what state law requires for middle housing? And if so, in what ways? And if not, why not? So Kurt, you're up first.
Sure. So you're talking about HB 1110, which is the missing middle law. And in
Yes.
fact, Kirkland passed missing middle back in 2020, so 5 years ago. And in fact, the HB 1110 is patterned after Kirkland's law, which is one of the reasons why our update is so small, because we're already mostly in compliance. Should we go above and beyond? Well, what is the point of that law? The point of that law is to create more housing in our cities, in the places where housing fits best. And is that a goal that we are trying to achieve? If it is, I would say, yeah, it's okay for us to go above and beyond. If we're always doing nothing but the bare minimum, that's how we wind up getting more state preemption. That's how we wind up getting more people that don't live in Kirkland coming in and telling us what to do and where to put things and giving us those one-size-fits-all policies. If we take the lead on trying to solve this problem ourselves here in Kirkland, we get to have control. We get to have a say over how it looks. If we're dragging our feet the whole way, we're going to wind up getting the exact same policies and exact same rules as all the other states that are doing the same thing. So I personally believe Kirkland has been a leader. We were a leader in 2020 when we passed missing middle. We should continue to be a leader. Thanks.
Shilpa.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think one very nuanced provision that we have to understand is it's the capacity, right? And so if we have additional units and capacity, that's a good thing, because not all land will be developed the way we want it to be developed, right? It's a market issue. And so I do think that we need to have a higher capacity in order to be able to have more affordable housing, ultimately. And I do agree that if we don't plan for that, suddenly we'll be 20 years down the line with not enough homes. And the prices, if you see the prices now, you will see what the prices are in 20 years. And I don't think any of us want to be in a situation like that.
Right, Catie.
So I respectfully disagree. You're meeting the state mandated targets. And I disagree because Kirkland does not have the infrastructure to support it. We already have neighborhoods that they cannot flush their toilets. It will not matter if you can buy a 1,600 square foot house for $1.6 million if you can't flush your toilet. And I think that we really need to think about the fundamentals and the basics of infrastructure before we grow beyond what we can do. Water is when you look at Pavlov's hierarchy of needs, it's one of the fundamentals. And we have several neighborhoods right now that don't have it. The Highlands, there are water pressure issues in South Rose Hill. And I would argue that if we continue at this pace, that there's going to be more neighborhoods that are also going to face these infrastructure issues.
Right. Jon, you're up.
Yeah, so I think this comes down to basic kind of land use planning, and the way that I approach it is, really kind of tying the growth and development to the infrastructure that we have to support it. And when you think about our neighborhoods, they weren't envisioned or planned in that way with the utilities and the streets and so forth. And so we haven't done our homework yet to be able to really pinpoint those areas that can really absorb additional density, and which areas do we need to invest in with that infrastructure to support it. And we need to have that community conversation with the residents and make sure that we're hearing from the community on these things. I would say, to respond to some of the comments I've heard, we were the first to adopt these regulations. We were still mandated with state requirements, even though we were the first to do that. So I don't know that doing that is going to avoid state requirements in the first place. I do think that I think that you see a lot of development happening. I'm talking with all the home builders. They're not advocating for big changes in the middle housing legislation. They're actually advocating for small tweaks so that they can better build some of these smaller units in a way to meet the demand of the people moving here. And so that's different ways to design driveways and housing layouts and that. They're not asking for increased density. They're asking for places to make sure that those houses are designed in a way that the residents want.
So shifting gears a little bit, journalists and others have started describing an attention economy, that one of the scarcest resources we have is the ability to pay attention, given our phones and the news and everything around us, that just, it's difficult. So in thinking about city communication with residents, a number of you have already talked about wanting more communication. How do you see the city operating in this environment where even with wanting two-way communication, just it's a challenge for people to pay attention to what's happening in the city? And so as somebody wanting to be on city council, how do you think about, again, communication with residents and other stakeholders in this, where we're all a little attention deficit? Shilpa.
Yeah, sure. I think we need to just have more two-way communications and in-person communications. I think it makes the world of difference. I'm seeing it when I'm knocking on doors every single day. It is a different level of communication when you're standing in front of someone and they're telling you how they feel about an issue. And the context that you get from an in-person conversation, you just cannot get from an email that you get, or a public hearing notice that you get, or a Zoom call invitation that you're going to receive. So I do think we're going to have to come up with ways where we can have more often actual physical meeting places that are convenient for people. Sometimes a Thursday at 7:30 p.m. is not going to work for a lot of folks, but multiple options, multiple times, multiple places that are near different neighborhoods throughout Kirkland. I think we need to create that infrastructure so that we can get more real-time feedback as we continue to grow and work through our very difficult issues in our community.
All right, Catie.
I think there's quite a few things that we can do to improve communication. I think one thing we can do is really invest in our neighborhood associations and ensure they have the funding that they need and the tools that they need to communicate out to those impacted by policies that are coming and could potentially come to the individual neighborhoods. I feel like there's been a trend lately of just communication between the neighborhood associations diminishing, and I really think if we invest and really start engaging the communities again, especially around things like comprehensive plans, I think that would be a lot to improve communication. And also, there's very simple things you can do, like if you're going to be doing a big project in a neighborhood, you can send out a postcard to each and every person in the neighborhood, and it's a minimal cost. It's a rounding error to send it to each and every home of those impacted, so that they're not surprised as a project's being completed and they're going to be impacted if they have no idea.
Jon.
Thank you. Yeah, so there's two areas of reform in communication that I've been talking about for a number of months or a year on council. One is around the land use and regulation process. And this is the way we do it today. We go out, we ask the community, and we say, hey, what's your issues? What would you like to see? You know, kind of a blue sky kind of question. And then we go and we do our work, right? And then we come back, we have a proposal. We immediately put that into the formal process at that point. The Planning Commission reviews City Council. At that point, it's a one-way dialogue. There's no more two-way dialogue because it's a formal process, and you have your 3 minutes, or you can send an email to City Council. I would like to see that two-way dialogue before it reaches that formal process, because that's when we have an opportunity to really talk as humans to each other about different ideas and how we can accommodate those. The second piece of reform is around our capital projects, and I brought this up repeatedly, is that we adopt a capital improvement program budget with really a little idea about what that project is. It gets funded, and then it starts to get built. There's no going out to the community early in the design process and saying, hey, did we get this right? What do you think about this design? what do you think about the construction impacts that this project's going to have on the community for a period of time? We don't ask that until it's too late and we can't make any changes.
Right, Kurt?
I'm going to continue what I said earlier when we were talking about the 3 projects, and I really do believe that our public engagement process does need to be overhauled, and I think that it does need to start earlier, and I do think that it does need to be ongoing. I think that's very important, and there are examples of this. Like, this is not a new thing. There are other cities that have ongoing public engagement processes where they recruit a group of folks that's representative of the city, and they keep them on during the time of this during the time of the project to get continual feedback, allow them to go back out into the community, come back later with ideas, and I think we could really benefit from a process like that, both because it makes that more accessible to folks, and also because we get a better representative sample of who's going to be impacted by it. I also think, in general, like the city, sometimes their first instinct needs to be to share, and that's something that I think that the city could do a little bit better. But there is also a lot of ways that the city is working really hard to keep people informed that, you know, if this is where you hear about it, then this is where you hear about it. But you can go subscribe to mailing lists for every last little subject of things that the city works on. We have the Open Public Meetings Act, so you can go in and look and watch recordings of all sorts of meetings. I do it late at night because I'm a big nerd. And we even have a podcast. Like, we have a podcast that you can tune into while you're driving. It's a short podcast. It's a great one to listen to. So I think, you know, public engagement is really a two-way street, and both sides of that street need to be stronger. So, thanks.
All right, and perhaps related to communication, and actually some of you have brought this up already, but this forum, and there will be others like it that are hosted by neighborhood associations. And so what should the relationship look like between city government and neighborhood associations in your ideal world? What's the respective role of neighborhood associations, either versus or alongside with, but what does that relationship in your ideal world look like? Neighborhood associations, city. So Catie, you're up first.
That's a great question. I just would go to my fundamental principles of why I'm running for city council and what my responsibility is, and then go down from there. And you know, when I get elected, it's my job to serve the residents and the business owners of Kirkland. It is not the other way around. So we really need to think of how we can engage the neighborhood associations more so that the residents do feel like they have a voice and they are involved in the planning process, like Jon had mentioned, from the beginning, not at the very end of it. It's, you know, I know I'm going to sound really corny, but you know, I do really believe in a government of the people, for the people, and it's really our job to serve the residents of Kirkland and to really, it's not the other way around. And I think we need to make sure we've created the infrastructure with the neighborhood associations so that we can build and foster that.
All right, Jon.
How much time do we have?
90 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Well, you know, I come at this with a little bit of bias, to be honest, having been on the neighborhood board of the Finn Hill Neighborhood Alliance, and I did that before I was on council, and I'd say that the relationship between neighborhood associations and the city has changed a little bit over time since I was on the neighborhood board, and I think we've kind of de-emphasized neighborhood associations a little bit, trying to recognize that there's other conduits and other organizations there in the city to talk with and to hear from. But I still think the neighborhood associations are a really strong way of reaching you know, people throughout the city. And I think what I think we need to do, if we see an issue with neighborhood associations, instead of de-emphasize them, I think we need to prop them up and work with them to attract more people that want to get involved, with their neighborhood associations because it's a great way to learn how the city works. It's a great way to learn about the issues. It's a great way to learn how you can influence policy. And if I hadn't served on the neighborhood association, I probably wouldn't be sitting here. I probably wouldn't have learned the things that I was able to learn on that. And so I'd like others to have that opportunity, and I think the city has a responsibility of supporting them. We do right now, but I think there's another level of support that I'd like to see going forward. Thank you.
All right, Kurt.
All right, well, I mean, what is the role of the neighborhood association? I think the role of the neighborhood association is to help be a conduit of communication between the city to the people, between the people to the city. Now, that takes a different shape in different neighborhoods. So we're here at the, as guests of the Finn Hill Neighborhood Alliance, which is probably the largest, definitely the best funded, the only one with part-time staff, and the work that you all do is really commendable, and I'm excited about it. Going to the Billy Goat Trail opening and seeing all the work you all are doing with the Green Loop, it's fantastic. My neighborhood is teeny tiny. We're the smallest neighborhood in Kirkland, and I serve as the vice chair of my neighborhood association. Our neighborhood association looks really different than yours. We don't even have a sign like that, right? So it's a very different thing. And keep in mind, the Everest neighborhood is 61% multifamily. 61%. How many multifamily residents do you think are in the neighborhood association? 0, right? So we're not serving those residents as well as we could, and I think we do need to work harder to reach those residents, and I think if we want increased legitimacy and we want increased support from the city, I think the neighborhood association, including mine, absolutely including mine, needs to work harder to engage those residents that we historically haven't engaged.
I think we should be working alongside neighborhood associations. I mean, what are neighborhood associations? They are made up of citizens of each of these wonderful neighborhoods. And I think the way that an organization can bring in the various issues that are specific to a specific neighborhood and be able to bring that over to the city, I think is very beneficial. And I'm seeing that in practice today. Being able to actually organize an event like this and bringing in the candidates and making sure that your voices are heard, I think these are great things. And so I do think that we should continue to make sure that the city works alongside neighborhood associations, because ultimately you are the citizens of your neighborhood.
All right. Thanks so much. Just as a side note here, we are getting close to the time where all y'all's questions will have an opportunity to get asked to the candidates. So if you are in the middle of writing, please write quickly. And Scott Morris, who's in the back, somebody will pick those up, and we'll get those shortly. So one question that's near and dear to my heart. We've had some disagreements already, and I'm sure if this went longer, we would have more, and that's okay. That's why we talk, that's why we figure things out, so that we can get together and move forward together, even though we're going to have disagreements. So I want you to think of someone, or maybe a couple of someones, that you have some particular disagreements with. If you imagine being on, I'm not asking for names, but if you imagine being on council with them, like you might be voting in some different ways. And keeping that person or those couple of persons in mind, what are some things that you genuinely respect and like about that person and about their convictions and about their commitments that you could praise? And again, please do this in a way that doesn't call them out necessarily. But what are some things that you genuinely admire, respect, and like about this person with whom you disagree? So John, you're up first.
How much time?
This one feels really ironic to be able to give a time limit on this at all, but we're going to stick to the 90 seconds.
Well, first off, I think in Kirkland we're blessed that we are engaged I think respectfully in dialogue, and we've done that, and I think we lead like that on the council. So I'm very pleased about that. But when I think about talking with someone that I disagree with, it starts with making sure that I really respect, because I know that they're coming at it from a place of good intentions. I might disagree with them, but I know that they really believe in whatever it is that they might believe in. And I might disagree with them, but I know that it's not because they're trying to be disagreeable with me. So I respect that. And it's also, so that's also then that mutual respect that they share that with me, right? They listen, and I think that starts with listening, making sure that we are listening to one another, that we're hearing one another, that we're not talking over one another. And then when we disagree, that's okay. It's okay to disagree and not to hold a grudge, and move on and tackle that next problem that's coming along. And I think that's what I've done on council on my time, nearly 8 years, and that's what I'll continue doing as a council member.
Thanks. All right, Kurt.
I want to echo a couple things that Jon said. I think it's totally fine to disagree with folks. In fact, that's how we create new knowledge, is by disagreeing with things, and the whole Hegelian dialectic of thesis synthesis is an important part of creating new knowledge. I would say also, though, that I think it's really important to identify the areas where you do agree and make sure that you're willing to sit down and do work in those areas. Like, there have been people that, I'm going to name a name here, but I'm going to do it with the most respect. There's not a lot that Toby Nixon and I agreed on. But when we went to him and we asked him for help creating a portion of our website to help people get engaged, he did it like that, because he really, really cared about that. To a fault, which sounds crazy, but to a fault. And I really respected that in him. Even though there was very little else that we agreed on, he was willing to sit down and work with us on those things. So I thought that was great. I would also say that another really key important point is being willing to stand up for this decency, and being willing to say when you are seeing something that is not in line with these values. I think that is a critical role. I think that's how you get respect, and it's not something that I would take lightly.
All right, Shilpa.
Yeah, I think the real in-depth care that this person has for their community, and willing to put themselves out there in order to make significant changes, I respect that. Whether I agree with this person or not, I think getting out there and trying to do the best that person can possibly do for their community, and this is hard, right? This is hard work. So I really do respect that. I also think that the more ideas that are on the table, the more various opinions there are, the better we're all going to be, ultimately. All the good ideas at the very end sift through, and then we progress. And so I think the more different opinions that each of us have and are able to bring into the picture, the better off we all are.
All right, Catie.
So I think that's a great question. And one way I've always approached working with folks that I disagree with is that we all have had different experiences in our lives that shape our opinions and who we are today. And we all have to respect that, because everyone has different experiences, and so they see the world through their own lens. And so I can always respect that. And in addition to that, having worked in change management for years, I understand the principles that teams that disagree have better outcomes than teams that agree. They're usually able to spot pitfalls that you would otherwise run into, and you just have better outcomes. And so I always welcome having a respectable disagreement and sharing of opinions, because as Jon had pointed out earlier, you learn stuff. You learn from folks when you give someone an opportunity to express themselves and their opinions and the why behind it, because I think the why behind it is what is so important.
All right. We're going to move now to some of the questions that came in from folks who came tonight. And I'm going to do my best to sort of synthesize, because even just with these, there's some overlaps. We have some of the same concerns. And I think Kurt is up first. I'm going to do this way. So on Finn Hill, nope, backtracking. So one of the things that each of you has talked about are the transportation needs and pointed to multimodal. That word has come out of, I think, all of your mouths at one point or another. But a specific question that has actually come up from 3 folks here is around e-bikes. How do you view, there's some obvious trade-offs in the power that e-bikes come with, and the weight that they come with, and the speed that they come with, and the lack of licensing and training that they come with. I'm paraphrasing. How would you see some initiatives you could take as somebody on City Council to begin to address some of those concerns, benefits and opposite of benefits that seem to be coming with them right now? So Kurt, you're up first.
Can I have like 10 minutes?
We'll start the time turner that Hermione had.
Yeah,
we'll
please,
just keep going.
because I spend so many of my waking hours thinking about this issue. I'm not even joking. I am the biggest e-bike booster in the world. Like, I think e-bikes are like the greatest mobility hack ever invented, and cities should be falling all over themselves to get them into the hands of as many people as possible. That said, those kids and those wheelies, man, that's not okay. There are kids that are riding around things that are not e-bikes. They are unlicensed electric motorcycles, and we need to actually start enforcing those laws, because one of them is going to get themselves killed, they're going to hurt somebody, and honestly, they're going to ruin it for the rest of us who like to ride our e-bikes responsibly. So I am, and honestly, like, I've talked to Jon about this before. Like, we have had long conversations about this and how we don't want to put barriers in front of people getting out of their cars and using something else. Like, we really don't. But it's becoming a problem. And I stop kids all the time. Like, kids will be coming down the Kirkland corridor, and I just like walk right out in front of them, wait for them to come to a stop, and I pull them aside, and I'm like, don't screw this up for the rest of us, please. I try to explain to them, like, you've got responsibilities. You're a user of the road system, And like, yeah, you're 14, and your parent bought you that, and you never had any training, and you don't realize that you're putting so many people at risk. I mean, it is a very complicated issue. Let me just say, it is a very complicated issue. I feel very passionately about it.
All right. Shilpa.
I completely agree with Kirk here. I see these e-bikes coming through my neighborhood all the time. I've almost been run over a couple times. So it's very personal to me, for sure. And so I do think we need to have speed limits. And just like anything new, right? When we do have new technology or new instrumentation or things that just haven't been done before, then we all are learning with it, right? We are seeing the effects, the downstream effects of these new technologies coming into play. So we need to think of the best safety procedures possible and implement those, and do it quickly before someone gets hurt.
All right, Catie.
So I don't think that we need to reinvent the wheel on this one. The city of Issaquah is already impounding these e-bikes. As was pointed out, they're essentially electric motorcycles that are unlicensed and being operated by an unlicensed driver. I had my own experience in the left-hand turn lane in downtown Kirkland, and as the light turned green, I started to go, and I had 2 young teenage males pass me on the left side. It was pretty scary, and we really need to create policy before we have a Sentinel event in Kirkland.
Hey, Jon.
Well, first off, I love my e-bike. I don't have an e-motorcycle, though. But my e-bike allows me to get around the city pretty easily with all the hills and stuff. And if I lived on Finn Hill, I'd definitely have one. That being said, I don't know that I disagree with what I've heard here. But what I would say is Kirkland's not alone in this. This is like a statewide issue, and it's probably beyond the state. I sit on the Active Transportation Safety Council for Washington State, and we're starting to talk about this, where this body helps create legislation and regulations around active transportation safety, and we're starting to see a lot of more information from our healthcare providers about the injuries that are occurring from not just e-bikes, but also from the e-scooters and other things like that, particularly for the younger population. So for me, it's about education. It's about educating not just the kids, the adults, but also the parents. And that we have to continue to take a proactive stance on that as a city and other community organizations that can distribute that information. Schools would be another organization that we could work with on that. But ultimately, we also need to be thinking about how we enforce that, but do it in a way that's, it's all about education. But there has to be some teeth for those really awful situations. Thank you.
Also from the audience, it's a common thing for candidates, not just for council, but all levels, to say they're pro small business. But what would that mean for you? As somebody who's running for city council, what does it mean to support small local business for you? So Shilpa, you're up first.
Yeah, I would want to make it much easier for people to be able to start businesses from the beginning. So that means reducing the time it takes to get permitting done, reducing red tape, and get their business up and running quickly. So I do support anything we can do to move that forward. I also think if we could have some sort of specialized small business concierge. So if someone is starting a new business, that they are able to reach out to someone if they have questions on the permitting process or the startup costs or the any sort of tax questions they may have, that they're able to get that help and assistance as quickly as possible. So I think if we can set up some more infrastructure around that to make sure that businesses that want to start up, they're able to do so, can do so quickly, I would support that. I also think we have a lot of other events, like we have our farmers markets and other different events where we get businesses together. I would want to make sure that we reach out more to other small businesses so that they know that these events are actually occurring, that they can come and they can promote their product, that they can promote their businesses. For an example, the Kirkland Chamber, just a few weeks ago, there was a fashion show there, and there were multiple businesses across Kirkland that came and showed up. A lot of new products that I didn't even know existed, and I think a lot of other people didn't know existed, but a great chance for people to get together and communicate.
All right, Catie?
So I would argue we need less infrastructure around the permitting process, because I think that's what's slowing it down. Also, especially when you look at, we've got a business that finally got a sign put up after 3 months. So I spent an entire day talking with businesses in downtown Kirkland, and the feedback I heard again and again and again was that the city of Kirkland is not prioritizing the local businesses. And I think we need to really look hard at those festivals and really see if they're benefiting the small businesses of Kirkland, and ensure that when we do have those festivals, that we're supporting our businesses and not taking away parking for their regular customers, especially during their high season in the summertime. I think we also need to start looking at creative ways to ensure we're able to get more traffic, or foot traffic, as well as into downtown Kirkland, so that there's more folks there patronizing our businesses in downtown Kirkland, because they are struggling and they do need our support.
Well, I'm glad that the city now has an economic a development director who can interface with our business community, and that's something that just started the last few months. That's a good step in the right direction. But ultimately, it's about talking with our businesses. It's getting involved and asking them what are the issues that the city can help them with. And so it's kind of basic communication. You think that sounds simple, but that's an ongoing thing that we have to kind of continue, and we have to have a forum for that at the city side. And working with the chamber is definitely a good start, but there's so many more businesses that aren't involved in the chamber that we do need to understand. The biggest things I hear about are some of the issues that have been talked about with the events. We have a number of small businesses that they basically lose access when events come in. And that's, when you think about it, that's really difficult, and that's a hardship on them when their customers can't get to their business. Some of our construction projects, I think, unfortunately, we don't necessarily think about the impacts to businesses up front when we're planning for construction closures or a capital project. And I think that just needs to be get into our process more, so that we're talking with the businesses early on and figuring out how we can mitigate and avoid impacts to them. Again, that's a conversation that we need to have, that we need to make sure our staff are doing. Thank you.
All right, Kurt.
So what does supporting local businesses mean? It means creating an environment where they can succeed. And there are a lot of different ways that we can do that. One of the big ones is lowering the barrier to entry. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the pop shops that they have up in Bothell, but it allows people to start a business with a really, really low investment, try and get something off the ground, and then if they can prove the concept, now they have a revenue stream, now they have customers, they can move into a lease like a normal business, and then the next business can come along. And it really helps create entrepreneurship here in our community instead of just inviting in big chains and things like that from elsewhere. The other big one, to harp on this, because I won't stop harping on it, the number of times that I've talked to businesses that are struggling because they cannot hire employees because employees cannot live in our city is huge. I remember seeing a post on Facebook by the owner of Lady Yum basically saying, please, can anyone please help me find affordable housing for my employees, because I can't keep them if they have to commute 60 minutes each way. I've talked to a young music teacher who was born and raised in Kirkland, went to Juanita High School, and she is having to take her business elsewhere and move out of Kirkland because she can't afford to live here. So housing for workers is huge. Lowering the barrier to entry, those are some really big ways that we could really support our local businesses. Thanks.
I think we have time for, well, we are almost at 8:30, so closing statements. And then we'll be free to mix and mingle afterwards. But yeah, so starting with Catie, we had told each of the candidates that they would have time for 1 minute for just a closing final elevator pitch for their candidacy for City Council.
So thanks again for having the forum and giving us an opportunity to come talk. I decided to run a couple years ago, and I was really motivated to run based on a lack of transparency from our city. And it's been really interesting. I live in Houghton. Our community has become way more engaged over the last few years. And I've just really noticed that decision-making at the city level is becoming less and less about the residents and the businesses of Kirkland, and really more about outward-facing entities. And I really think it's important that we really focus on the city of Kirkland being a nonpartisan government entity that is focused on the basics and the fundamentals of what a city needs to be doing for its residents. When you turn on the faucet, does your water come out?
Hey, John.
All right, well, thank you. So Kirkland, I think, as you know, faces some big challenges, but we can only solve them together by listening to one another and focusing on what matters most in our community. That's growth that fits our community, That's housing that works for everyone. That's transportation that connects us all. That's safe and welcoming parks. And that's strong public safety. That's where I focused my work the last 8 years on council, and that's where I'm going to be focusing my work on the next 4 years if reelected. I'm honored to serve as your council member, and I would be grateful for your support this November. Thank you.
All right, you've heard a lot tonight about a lot of hot button issues: affordable housing, tree canopy, traffic. I already knew that those would be the hot button issues. You've heard from several people asking for you to trust them to lead the city that we all call home. I love this city. I truly believe that our best days are ahead of us, and I'm excited for what's coming next. We've always been a regional leader, and cities, not just on the east side, but all over the state, look to Kirkland as an example of what can be accomplished with good governance and a bold vision. There are those that would like to take Kirkland backward by saying no to progress and no to the future, but I believe we must be the city that says yes. Yes to innovative housing solutions so our kids and seniors can afford to live here. Yes to protecting and expanding our green spaces while we grow. And yes to building a vibrant, inclusive, and forward-thinking community for the next generation. The choice is between looking back or moving forward. I'm Kurt. I'm asking for your vote. Let's move forward. Thanks.
Thank you so much for being here at 8:30 in the middle of the week. I care deeply about this community that we're building. I love this city and really want to ensure that it's vibrant, it's welcoming, and it's a place where my kiddos, the seniors, and everyone in between can enjoy and live a wonderful life. One thing I have realized really to make this happen is to make sure that the people on council are able to make thoughtful, common sense decisions. And this is exactly what I plan on bringing to council. I'm bringing a fresh voice to council. Serving you starts with listening to you. I promise you that if I am on council, I will make sure to listen to each and every voice to make sure that our unified voice is what's taking Kirkland forward. Thank you so much, and I hope to earn your vote.
Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight and giving your time and attention. And feel free to hang out for a bit, but the official formal part at this point is complete.
Thanks to the candidates.
Can we thank James, too? Can we thank James, our moderator?
Thank you, James.
We got a lot of questions. I'm sorry we couldn't distill them and put them in front of everyone. We have another forum here, same time next week, Monday night. The other four candidates from the other two seats will be here. And if you have additional questions, send them in. We'll try to, take these and the new questions and boil them down. If you have recommendations for the format or how to run this, please let us know. And I also wanted to thank Danielle in the back